Hi guys, I'm Kim Pingaro, and welcome to the Atomic Mommy Podcast. This is your podcast to understand everything and anything about parenting life, where each week I speak to special guests and cover even the most taboo of parenting topics. Before we dive in, remember you can find and follow the Atomic Mommy Podcast on iTunes and Spotify, or you can visit my website to listen in at www.atomicmommy.net. Now, let's get to it. Today's special guest is Kristina from Vibrant Family Education. She uses her 27 years of teaching experience to empower parents to provide their children with a holistic education. One that not only equips them with academic skills, but also instills qualities like compassion, integrity, determination, and a growth mindset. Kristina believes that when children recognize their strengths and weaknesses, they can understand their unique learning styles and better navigate the world. Hi, Kristina. Thank you so much for being a guest on the Atomic Mommy Show. I'm very excited to have you, and I just want to say thank you one more time because I know it takes some time to, work around the schedules. So when we spoke about how we're both in the family business and we're both working towards making sure that families and parents especially understand and learn tips and tricks to sort of make the parenting journey a lot better, right? So you have a specific niche that you're in, right? So you have something called Vibrant Family Education. Is that right?
That's correct. Absolutely. Thank you, Kim.
So tell me more about what it is Vibrant Family Education does, and then we'll jump into what you want to talk about.
Excellent. Thank you very much for having me on the show, and I'm really glad to be able to talk with your audience as well. And, Vibrant Family Education is all about what you talk about in a lot of ways. It's about families. It's about moms. It's about kids. And the education part is those families who want to look at their child's education and make sure it's the best that it can be for their child. So Vibrant Family Education is really helping dig into the education niche and really looking at what is best, how your children can learn best.
Okay, so it sounds like we're in a similar industry, both of us, where we want to help parents, we want to help children and family, and we want to make it so that it's informational, helpful, tip-related, so parents can take these tips and turn it into action. So with that said, you did bring up one specific topic that you were very excited to talk about, and this is called, I think you said, 3 ways to help children be resilient when families are facing trauma or big challenges, right? So let's get into that. I'm very excited to learn because I'm a mom of 4, so I'm sure you know that. I want to learn something. So teach me. Tell me what that's all about.
Awesome. Wonderful. Well, I was a teacher for 27 years, and during those 27 years, it was one of those things that I had to learn a lot about families and a lot about children and about resilience in those children. And so one of the things that I like to talk about is the 3 things that help keep our children resilient. And the very first one is communication. Communication with your educator, right? So many of us moms have our children who go to daycare or go to public school or go to some kind of learning area. And when we are having our children away from us for those amounts of times, sometimes we forget to communicate completely with those educators. And so my very first tip is please communicate with your educator at the beginning of the school year or when you first enroll your child. Make sure you're getting that contact information. And the reason why goes very much along with this story that I like to tell. When I first started teaching, I always loved communicating with the parents, but sometimes they would forget to communicate with me. And then as I got to know my children in the classroom, I would notice behavior changes and I would notice things that might be a little bit off with their child. Maybe they weren't raising their hand as much as normal, or maybe they were shouting out instead of sitting quietly and waiting patiently as they usually did. There was some kind of change in behavior. And when I saw that, that would be my cue to pick up the phone or email and call mom and dad and say, hey, what's going on? Is there something happening in your life or your child's life that could be impacting their school? And many times they would give this shocked look on their face or this shocked sound to their voice. And they would say, oh, I didn't think about calling you and letting you know. We're getting a new puppy this weekend and our child is just super, super excited. It's like, Awesome. I'm so glad it's a happy thing. But then unfortunately, other times it would be sadder things. Oh, grandma or grandpa's in the hospital and we're having a lot of late nights because we're visiting and things like that. We're really sad right now. Or sometimes even as far as, oh, yeah, my spouse and I are fighting a lot and we may be getting a divorce. And it's like, oh, well, I don't want to be in your business. But at the same time, if I don't know those kinds of things, I can't support your child. Because what happens is your child is trying to deal with all of those emotions, and then they're getting in trouble at school because they're not paying attention and doing what they need to do. And so then the problem just compounds, right? So the very first thing I really want to encourage everyone to do is talk to the people who care for your children when you are not around. Make sure they understand when something big or even small sometimes is happening that can change your child's behavior.
You bring up a really good point there. And it's a subtle, a small, quiet thing that most of us don't realize that we need to do. And here's why I'm going to say that. I'm going to say that because most of us either work from home or we're out there in an office somewhere doing something. We're just away from our kids. We give our kids to educators or to daycares, but we forget a very important piece of the puzzle are those people who are watching our kids, looking after our children. And technically, they're the ones who are supposed to be guiding and supporting our children. And if we don't communicate exactly the things like you said, it makes it more difficult for those individuals to properly guide them. And then there's a whole plethora of problems that come up with that, right? Sometimes the kids act out, sometimes they bully because they don't know how to cope with these feelings. So I think what you're talking about is very important. I also think it falls behind the curtain so many times. It's like we forget that that's what you're there for. You're not just there for the kids in terms of that, you're also there for us to help you with the kids. And it's like a partnership that we need to do together. That's really great. I love that tip. So tell me, what's tip number 2? Because now I'm very I'm toned in. I'm ready for what you got to tell me.
All right. So tip number 2 goes back to the parent side of communication, and it's actually the opposite of an old saying. Have you ever heard the saying, don't air your dirty laundry?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So yeah, so don't air your dirty laundry is an old saying that we have that means don't talk about problems, don't talk about things to other people, keep things kind of quiet and private, right? And my thing is please do the opposite of that when you're working with and dealing with your children. Air your dirty laundry to your children in age appropriate ways. And the reason why is because our children have like a spidey sense. They know when something is going on. They understand that there's something to change or there's something that you're maybe not telling them, right? And many, many times that spidey sense goes off and then they're always wondering, what is it? What's going on? And again, I like to relate this back to stories of real life experiences because it really brings it home to people. And that is, even though I was a teacher in a classroom for a while, and I'm not now, but I was, and I would go into my classroom, and the days that I would be kind of down and quiet, they could sense that. And the really super sensitive ones, they'd be like, Mrs. Heagh-Avritt, is there something wrong? Is everything okay? And then on the days that I was excited because maybe I was getting ready to take a trip or something, or there was a surprise at my house, again, I would be kind of different emotion, different feeling, and they could notice that. And sometimes their behavior was off that day because they could kind of sense my feelings. And so I knew that as an educator, my job was to be sure to keep my personal out of the classroom as much as possible. But I learned that I had to share at least a little bit because when those days happened, that their behavior was off because they knew I was off for some reason, that is super, super important. And the biggest thing was the year that my father-in-law was in the hospital, passing away of cancer. I was super sad. And they wanted to know, it's like, what's going on? What's going on? And I didn't want to share that heaviness with them. But at the same time, they needed to know that I was going through some things so that it might be off a little bit, right? So this goes to the parents. If you are yourself working on your personal development journey, you yourself are dealing with something heavy or even something super exciting, air your dirty laundry with your children. Give them age appropriate information so that they don't think it's actually them, because that spidey sense goes off and they start telling stories in their head. They're like, oh, what did I do to make mom mad? Oh, what am I doing wrong that we aren't getting to go out to eat, or we aren't getting to do these fun things that we usually do? So I'm talking about emotional things for parents, financial things for parents. Let them know it's not them. Don't let that spidey sense give them a wrong impression that they're doing something wrong. So tip number 2 is air your dirty laundry in age appropriate ways to make sure that your children know that they are fine and that you are actually the one who's dealing with something.
That's a really important tip as well. So many of us don't like to air our dirty laundry. I grew up in a very strict household, a Hispanic household, and one of the biggest things that we're taught is we don't talk about our problems outside of the house. We don't say it. We don't even think about it. We just leave it at home. Because God forbid, anyone knows our stuff and anyone tries to even talk to us about it. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so coming from that type of childhood, I've sort of done the opposite. I talk to my kids and I let them know in like you said, child age appropriate ways of doing so. So I'll give you an example of something that um, I had to have surgery. I had to have a hysterectomy, and
Yeah.
they knew I was nervous. They knew I was scared, and so I had to make it sound as if not that it was scary, but just to let them know, I'm going to be in the hospital for a couple of days. It's just a surgery. I'm going to be home, and then I'm going to be in a little bit of pain. And when you see me in pain, it doesn't mean anything bad. I'm just trying to make sure that I'm better. So it was very, they were a couple years younger. So it was very age appropriate, a little bit of information, not too much. So I think it's very good that you give that tip for parents, because oftentimes we don't even want to talk to them about that stuff. We think it's too much for them, right? So I'm
Exactly.
loving where this is going. Tell me what tip number 3 is.
So tip number 3 is a little bit of a different thing. We're moving away from the communication, but it's actually around schedules and routines. So schedules and routines are super, super important for our children. And not only are they important for our children, but they're important for us as adults and families as well. And so many of us have a routine or a schedule that we try to follow, right? And so again, I relate it back to my classroom because I was, in the classroom for 27 years, but also just in my own family life. If the schedule and routine were to change suddenly, or things were different and the children didn't know what was coming next, the behavior in the classroom would be a lot different because they didn't have those boundaries. They didn't have those kind of bumper rails that we have like in bowling and things like that, so that they would know where their behavior kind of needed to be, right? And so one of the things I really like to say with parents is if you have a really strong nighttime routine, if you have a really strong dinner routine, if you have a strong cleanup routine for toys and things like that, whenever things start getting really crazy for you as a family, maybe, like I said before, the parent is going through their own self-development journey, they're trying to heal some of their own traumas, and they have emotional swings up and down. Maybe it's just normal life and we're going up and down with our emotions. If we have those routines set up and practiced, then we can fall back and rely on them. We can take our brain out of the equation and say, oh, it's nighttime routine. I'm going to do A, B, and C, just like I always do with my kids, so they feel that safety and security of knowing what's happening. I can relax my brain and relax my emotions a little bit and just focus on them. Okay. And like I said, children thrive on routine and schedule. And I'm not talking about military. At this time, you have to be doing this thing, right? But letting them know what's happening. And one of the biggest things that I saw that in was the time that my husband and I took our boys to California to Disneyland. And we were so, so excited because we were going on this huge vacation, and the boys were supposed to be super excited because they were getting to do something that they haven't done before. And we get there, and the very first day was an absolute disaster. And I looked at my husband, I'm like, what is going on? Why are they being ungrateful? Why are they not excited about being in Disneyland? And he looked at me and he says, Kristina, you're the teacher and you should know this better than anybody. You just took them completely out of their schedule, routine, and boundary. They miss lunch. They're overstimulated. They don't know what's coming next. What do you expect them to do? They're overexcited. And so I just had to step back, like, Oh my gosh. Yeah, I totally blew it on that one. So the very next day in Disneyland, we went in the morning. We took a break, had lunch on time. We actually left the park in the afternoon for a while and calmed down and unstimulated a little bit. And then we went back in the evening, and the change was amazing just because we had put more of those schedules and routines back around our children so they weren't so overexcited and overstimulated, right? And one of the things I like to ask the audience is, have you ever tried to keep like a Christmas surprise away from your children, right? They kind of know that spidey sense goes off, right? Or you let your boundaries go during summertime. And then all of a sudden your kids are acting up. They're fighting with each other. They don't know what to do. Again, you've dropped those boundaries and routines, and it kind of throws things into chaos. So tip number 3 is keep your boundaries and routines. Yes, relax them during special times, but help your kids and you yourself relax when you need to.
So I like the routines and boundaries. I'm big on that here. I have a lot of homeschool moms who like to homeschool their kids, and they talk about unschooling and getting rid of the structure, getting rid of the routines and the boundaries. What do you say to those kind of parents who are more of an advocate for sort of like a free for all versus what we're talking about?
I bet if they look at it carefully, even though they're unschooling, even though they have a more free flowing lifestyle, there's still certain routines. They still probably have dinner around the same time or lunch around the same time. They still probably sit down and read with their children kind of about the same time. They kind of have a flow to their life. So even though maybe they don't have a strict schedule or routine, there's a flow that feels good. And so they kind of still have those things kind of built into their schedule. So I bet that's probably what's happening and they don't realize it. But then some people really can thrive like that. So, more power to you, because your family needs to do what is good for you and your family.
Yeah. You're right. Maybe that's one of the things that a lot of people don't realize is that we actually might have some routines that we don't realize are a routine. The bedtime
Yeah.
story, or maybe the dinner time, how we do that. So it's kind of a good thing. So just to reiterate, let's just say those 3 tips one more time. So the first one was what?
Communication with the people who are around your children when you can't be there. And that's usually their educator or their daycare provider. Make sure you're letting them know when little things and big things are happening in your family that could impact your child, and so that they can give them the emotional support that they need to get through that situation.
And then tip number
Number 2,
2 was, yeah.
oh, was air your dirty laundry. Go ahead and talk to your children, talk to your family around things that might be a little bit difficult, whether it's financial difficulties, whether it's a personal healing journey, you working on your own trauma, or even those bigger things like grandma and grandpa being sick. Talk to them in age appropriate language so they understand, so they aren't thinking there's something wrong with what they're doing because they have felt a change in the dynamics in the house.
And then number 3 was, keep the routines and the boundaries and try to flow with that. I mean, this is
Exactly.
all
And
great
mostly the reason.
information.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. It's a lot of time, that stuff that I've learned through the years, raising my own boys of 22 years, or sorry, more than that, 33 years, and also teaching in the classroom for 27.
Don't worry, I forget how long I've been a parent too. So let's talk about what you do and how you are able to not just teach these 3 tips, because you do teach other things that I saw on your website. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Thank you so very much. Yeah. So Vibrant Family Education, like I was talking a little bit before, is really helping parents take control of, empowering them to be in charge of their child's education. And that could be just wrapping around the public education and teaching their children some more family values or life skills that they want them to learn, all the way up to and including homeschool, helping your family move away from the public education system and becoming one of those homeschool families. So I try to help bridge that gap and help people get started with their homeschooling journey and making sure that they are getting things set up, that they're understanding that it's a lot different. It's not just taking the public school out of the classroom and plopping it down in your living room. It's a different mindset. It's a different routine. It's a different, skill set. But parents know their children best. And so they can absolutely do it, especially if they get a little bit of help and guidance for those pieces that they're not sure of.
So, so you do this, and you've been doing this for how long now?
Over 2 years, yeah. But of course, I have all my 27 years of teaching background that helps inform my information for the parents.
So I noticed that you have certain things that you offer to parents and families on your website. What are some of those things that you offer parents? So like, how do we sign up and things like that?
Thank you for asking. I really appreciate that. Well, one of the things that I really, we give freely to our audience is we have our own podcast called Bringing Education Home. And it is a resource podcast. So it interviews experts and things around communication, brain science, nutrition, all the different things that parents might need to help them figure out this journey of either homeschool or educating their child. So that's the first thing, Bringing Education Home. The next thing is that I have a 6-week course where we dive deep into helping families make that transition, make that journey from public school family into homeschool family. So during those 6 weeks, we talk a lot about family values, goals for education, different curriculums that are available, making sure that families are doing it legally so they don't have a truancy officer come and knock on their door and say, hey, why aren't your kids in school, right? All those things, all those questions that parents want to know before they take this big step into homeschool. And then the other part of the program is you can continue with me and I can help support you along the way. So maybe you're stuck with teaching your child a reading concept. You can come and work with me a little bit and I can help your child, or I can teach you how to help your child, and we can get over that stuck point and then keep moving forward.
That's fantastic. Wow, that's a lot that you offer families and parents. So that's awesome. So how do we find you? How do we talk to you? How do we sign up for what you have or the courses you offer?
Facebook is open. My DMs are open. Kristina Heagh-Avritt. You can find me everywhere there. But the best place is vibrantfamilyeducation.com. Everything is there. And there's a brand new website coming up soon. You'll see it there. But I have things in place right now. It's there, vibrantfamilyeducation.com, and you can get a hold of me there.
That's perfect. Now, so you're on Instagram, you're on Facebook. What else are you on?
LinkedIn. Yep.
You're on LinkedIn as well. So we could find your podcast on Apple and Spotify, I'm assuming, right?
Absolutely. All the big platforms.
And then we can visit your website, vibrantfamilyeducation.com, so that we can look up your courses. And I think I saw an ebook on there, right?
I do, actually. Thank you. That's another free thing that I give away. I have an ebook about 10 simple steps to education at home. And it starts talking about some of those steps that you might consider if you're choosing to take charge of your child's education and maybe moving into homeschooling.
So you offer a great deal of information, a lot of free resources for families and parents. So I want to thank you first for all of that everything that you do, because you have so much knowledge and experience and wisdom that we can all just take from you and use that, absorb it in our own lives to try to help our families and our kids become resilient. So thank you for that. And now that's the end of our episode. So I just want to say thank you so much for being a guest on my show, Kristina, for teaching parents and myself some of these amazing tips that you've given us. And I want to say, please keep doing the work you're doing. It is so amazing what you do.
Thank you very much for having me on the show. Bye for now.
And there you have it, super parents. Another episode packed with joy, wisdom, and all the parental love in the universe. Remember to swoop back here every Wednesday for more parenting delights. Stay connected with our vibrant community on Instagram and Twitter at atomic_mommy. And don't forget to subscribe on YouTube for more fantastic videos designed with you in mind. Craving more tips, guides, and the coolest parenting merch? Visit www.atomicmommy.com, where the fun never ends.